Hey Grinder School, welcome back. This is CodeRed Rules, and today I'm going to be reviewing hands from the last Grinder School Cash Game series played on Merge Network. And let's go ahead and get started here. The hands I have right now, I'm going to start off with Gingerbread Man's hand. These are 6 mechs. We played at 4-0. And we should have 4 guys on this table, or 5 from the Grinder School. 5. So we've got Gingerbread Man, myself, Nitreg, Back in Spades, and I believe Streeto check, only because he was playing very solid. He was on all of our tables. Otherwise, I don't really know his Grinder School name, but I'm going to be reviewing some of his hands too, just because I'm fairly certain that he is. But, alright, let's go ahead and get started here. The first hand that I have is actually a very common theme for players, I would say at around the 10-0, 25-0 level, and where they get into trouble playing draws. Okay, so Streeto check open raises here. Gingerbread Man goes ahead and cold calls, and Gingerbread Man has Jack 10 of hearts. Alright, he flops a very good draw. Alright, he flops 2 overcards, gut shot draw, flush draw. I mean, usually when you guys see this board, you know, you guys are in a very good mood. Decisively so. Alright, so what Gingerbread Man does compared to what we should do instead, Gingerbread Man raises it up, you know, I mean, and essentially bluffs. Now, is this bluff going to be a plus EV play? Yes, it is. But is it the most plus EV play? Now, the reason why it's a plus EV play is because we have a lot of equity. Okay? But it's because we have a lot of equity is what makes this a not great play. Okay, so let's say we had Jack 10 of diamonds here. Bluff raising Jack 10 of diamonds is actually a much better play, because overall the goal is to get our opponent to fold when we're bluffing. Right. We have so much equity here with Gingerbread Man that we don't really care, or we don't really want Streeto check to fold whatever range he's going to be calling us with. Here's an example. So let's give Streeto check a hand like Pocket Kings, alright? Which he actually does have. We have Jack of Hearts, 10 of Hearts, and with the board of 9 of Hearts, 7 of Hearts, 2 diamonds, I think. Oh, I got those mixed up. It will change equity slightly if I don't have those right. So yeah, we have 45% equity here in this situation. We don't need to be bluffing. In fact, it's more than a plus EV for us just to be calling, getting the pot odds that we're getting. We're getting 30% pot odds. We need, you know, we can go as low as he can be making a pot size bet here. It still wouldn't really matter much. Right, we would still be calling, and in fact, we can call almost every single turn as well. I mean, that's just not even including against kings. All right, let's give him ace 9 and also king king. Okay, and it turns out we actually are a favorite. Well, yeah, we're a favorite, but now we no longer really need to be bluffing. We're going to be value raising, but we don't have that much equity. You know, as much equity that you think that we can just start going ahead and, you know, I mean, value raising our hand right here. We have enough equity to continue, but not really enough equity that we want to be building the pot, like, and going for stacks situation. So the last thing we want to do is really be playing for stacks when we actually have a flush draw. And this is going to be pretty similar for pretty much all draws. And the funny thing is, this is probably the first type of hand where, you know, let's see, Streeto check here, goes ahead and re-raises, we go ahead and get it all in. This is the first type of hand you guys think about when you think about bluff raising flops. And in reality, it's the last situation that you want to do it in, because you have just too much equity in the hand that you're pretty much wasting that equity by turning it into a bluff. Because our opponent's going to fold a lot. He's going to be folding a lot to our raise on this flop. It'd be different if we felt, well, maybe it wouldn't be that different if we felt like he wasn't going to fold, but the fact is we expect him to fold a very large percentage of the time. And so therefore we're better off raising when we have less equity and calling when we have more equity. So I'm saying a hand like Jack 10 of diamonds in this situation is a much better bluff raise. Our equity nowhere near as good as we had before, and you guys are thinking like, well, why the hell would I bluff raise without that much equity. Well, it's like even still, Jack ten diamonds is better off. You're probably better off calling here Jack ten diamonds. Same thing if we had ace x of hearts. Pretty much any draw where we've got over 30% equity here, we shouldn't be raising on the flop. Now, granted, Jack, I guess 34% isn't that much because they're counting a lot of our equity here with 2 overcards. I like using the conservative estimate of pocket kings. 22%, much better estimate here using this situation. The reason why this is a good board to bluff raise is because, one, we have so many 2-barreling cards that can come on the next street that gives us a lot of opportunities to keep barreling. So pretty much any heart, any diamond, any queen, any king, all gives us 9 outs or better. Okay, we're going to be firing. I'm sorry. If we hit a jack or a 10, we're going to be checking behind, and if we hit an 8, we had the nut, so we're going to keep betting. So we have a plan for every card. For every single diamond out there, which are 10 remaining diamonds. Okay, we have a plan for 3 8s that aren't a diamond. We have a plan for 3 kings and 3 queens that aren't a diamond. So that's 19 cards. Throw in the other 6 from the jack 10 of diamonds. From the other, for the jack or the 10. That's 25 cards. So we have a plan for 25 of 52 cards on the next street. That's a very good plan. What happens if we don't hit, or we don't hit one of those 52 cards, or 25 cards rather, out of 52 card deck? 25 cards rather out of the remaining 47 cards, so over 50% of the cards on the next street, we're going to know what to do with. All right, the other cards that you don't come up that are in there, all right. Oh, shoot, I'm not even counting the number of hearts that come. Oh my god, I didn't count the hearts. I'm sorry. So there are 11 hearts out there too. So it's 36 cards. You have a plan for 36 cards now, which is why I love Jack 10 of Diamonds so much on this board. So there's going to be so much that we can do on the turn when we try and bluff raise Jack 10 Diamonds that we don't want to be bluff raising Jack 10 of Hearts. Another good card to bluff raise in this board other than Jack 10 Diamonds would be maybe Ace 2 Diamonds. You could probably raise Ace 2 Diamonds. I mean, or you could call with it too. Probably better off to call with it. But backdoor flush draw, gut shot, 2 overcards, great situations to bluff raise. When we have the nice little combo draw like we do here, it's not necessarily something that we want to be getting in. As you can see, we're up against kings, right? And yeah, our equity isn't bad. We're 45% or what have you. And hey, that's great, but you know what? Every time you get your money in this situation, you're still going to be losing 5 cents on the dollar. All right, so think about it that way. You're still going to be losing 5 cents. You're getting all money in. It's going to be high variance play. What I would do, go ahead and call the flop. We hit the nuts on the turn, then we get it in. If we had the opportunity to. He's got the king of hearts, so he's probably not going to be stacking off. The ace of hearts is probably the worst card for us, given his hand. But if we were to call on the flop rather than raise, we'd be able to value bet the turn. We'd probably be able to get a value bet out in the river, and never really have to making a questionable or difficult play for the entire hand. Alright, so that's one way for you guys to be playing draws. And I know there was a question on the forums recently about how to play draws, and I went over draws specifically in my Poker 201 series about just playing draws post-flop. But this is an example, pretty close to example that I covered in that lecture. It's not for Microstakes players though, so if you guys want to check it out, go ahead and upgrade to subscription. And otherwise, let me know, or post some hands too. Like, if you don't have access to the video, then there's nothing stopping you guys from posting hands and getting quality content that way. All right, so on to the next hand here from Gingerbread Man. He doesn't have Jack 8, by the way. This is me. And he's playing against a random fish. And I'm trying to think here. I believe our opponent has Ace-Jack offsuit. Or I'm sorry, I believe we have Ace-Jack offsuit here. And I'm going to be saying, don't bluff the flop with the Ace-Jack. Alright. And the reason why I'm going to be saying that is, are we doing it for a bluff or are we doing it for value? Alright. If we're doing it for a bluff, right, what are we expecting to fold that we currently beat? I'm sorry, that currently beat us. Right? Is he folding any pair? No, probably not. Especially given this guy's fold continuation bet of Jesus, fold a C bet of 1 and 4. So I mean, and that's 0 of 3 in regular size pot. So I don't expect him to be folding any pair on this board. And then you could argue, all right, well, is it a C bet for value? And then I would be like, well, it's very, very thin for value. I don't think you guys are able to value bet, or I wouldn't be able to value bet even ace high at 4-0. That you guys probably wouldn't want to do it or try to go that way. So I believe the bet here is just for you to take it down on the flop, and it's not a very good bet because I feel like we could check behind a lot and win with ace high at showdown or pick off bluffs for the same bet size than say we would have if we had bet the flop and then checked it down afterwards. All right, I mean, this is another very, very common situation that, let's say in my own coaching sessions that I would have with a lot of students, even at 25-0, and even a lot of players at 50-0 too, they find themselves betting in these flops, and it's these tiny little bets that you guys don't think are that important, but they add up because it's all about how the money goes in. Rather than you betting the flop, him calling, and him bluffing the turn and you calling, or him betting the turn, you calling, the same amount of money, just the way that money goes in changes your win rate so much just because you give him a chance to bluff on the turn. He can't bluff call you on the flop. Well, he can, but don't expect to be bluff calling the flop. Alrighty, let's go on to the next hand. I believe we have pocket fives in this situation. And we played very well. We check call the flop, check call the turn. The only problem I have is we put a little min bet out here on the river with pocket fives. It doesn't make any sense at all. We open ourselves up to get bluff raced, which is something that we don't want to have happen. Like if we get popped to like 40 cents, all right, which is something that could very easily do, and you guys probably should be doing in this situation, given somebody's min raise on this river. Because like seriously, a bluff raise on this river, it doesn't cost you very much, and it's very cheap. And it's going to work out quite a bit because what kind of hand range can this guy have? You know, I mean, you check all the flop, check all min bet in the flop, check turn, and then you min bet the river. I mean, that's like a weak ace high, very weak pair, something that really can't stand a lot of heat. In my opinion, it's definitely not going to be the nuts. So I mean, that's the one reason why I can bluff you on the situation, just because you don't have the nuts. So I don't really care for the min bet. I would go for the check. If he min bets again, which he probably will do, go ahead and call it. I mean, we're not in the business of folding a big pot for getting like 12-1. But if he bets, 2/3 of the pot, I would just let it go. There's not really much we can do in the situation. If we had a 7, though, I probably would call. We get min raised. I mean, we're getting 15-1. This one bet is not going to kill you. This isn't really limit hold'em, so we can absorb these bets. But realize that it's kind of a silly play all the way around. Alrighty, so in this situation, we have pocket queens here, Gingerbread Man. We get called from a fish out of the blinds. I wish I would call here, only because this board rocks the crap out of my hand. And I remember that hand too, because I was like, oh man, I want to play this quick 6-3 suited. And I was gonna 3-bet. I squeezed just for the funsies, and I'm lucky I didn't, because Gingerbread Man has queens here. Good bet in the flop. I would have smacked off my flush on the turn, but Gingerbread Man, I think you got to keep betting. You don't want to be giving any free cards, especially because I know you don't have the queen of clubs. So you don't want to see that fourth club out. You don't want to see a 7. You don't want to see a 6. You really don't want to see a 9. You don't want to see a 10. There's a lot of cards you just don't want to see. And rather than giving those cards to your opponent for free, make him pay for them. So go ahead and value bet this turn. You value bet the river, and it's a good bet size, but you could have value bet the turn and then have a chance to get the money in on the river. It's the difference between the bet size here on the river and betting the same size on the turn. You wouldn't want to make this bet on the turn at 45 cents. You'd want to make it 60 cents. And the reason why that is, look how much money is left behind on the river. If you were to go all in on the river, this is assuming you guys we bet the turn. So if we were to go all in on the river, win the situation, he's got 30 cents more than the pot if we make it 15 cents more on the turn, so if we make it a 60-cent bet here, pot would be 120 plus 1, it'd be 192, and our opponent would have 15 cents less at 177. Therefore, it would be less than a pot size bet. It'd be very easy for us to shove it on the river if we had bet 60 cents on the turn. Since we check the turn, we limit ourselves to a lot of value, and we would have probably got a stack on the river, and given how fishy of a player he is. So we missed quite a lot of value there. We probably missed a good 40 big blinds of value, which is nothing to sneeze at, given, I mean, how many hands does that take for you to, even at 5 big blinds per 100, that's, I can't do the math, that's 800 hands of missed profit there, of 40 big blinds. So, think about it in that terms. It's really hard to miss value, especially like against a fish. And the thing is, if he like raises the turn, if you check raising again on the turn after you bet out 60 cents, it's probably going to be very easy for you just to go ahead and let it go. Unless, assuming he's not a very big maniac. He might be a big maniac, but if he is a big maniac, but he's not, he hasn't bet, period. So if he were to check raise, so I'm looking at his aggression frequency here. In the 28 instances that he's had, okay, he's only made an aggressive maneuver 3 times. And that includes either a bet or raise. He's never check raised once in 7 of those. So it's probably him betting, because he's bet in position once and then bet out of position once. So, like, of those 3 times post-flop that he's made an aggressive maneuver, 2 of those times have been betting out. So he might have raised once. Whatever that is going to be. So I look a lot. If you guys want, look at these aggression frequencies quite a bit and feel more confident in your value bets. And you can be very confident in your value bets is when you bet out, right? And you're very confident that if he were to raise you, it's a very easy fold. And this is one of those cases where you can value bet very thinly. If he raises you, it's a very easy fold because he just doesn't bet, or he hasn't check raised once. He doesn't raise. If he were a maniac, if he were a solid player, like if this were Nitreg, I still might value bet, but I wouldn't feel as confident folding to a check raise as I would be saying from this guy right here. Right. So when you're playing against a solid opponent, that's when you really want to be pot controlling, and you don't want to make a mistake one way or the other. But when you're playing against a fish, it's very easy spot for you to go ahead and value bet. All right. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a break, and we're gonna come back. I've got Handstrom's Dredo check, and also back in spades, I believe is the name, and we will be right back with those hands.
Alright guys, welcome back. Right now I've got 3 hands from back in spades and then 1 from Nitreg that I'd like to show you right off the bat here that I noticed looking through these. I wasn't planning on doing a lot of Nitreg or even really my hands, only because one, I don't feel like Nitreg needs my hotbenning. He's a very solid player, and I wasn't necessarily playing all that well. And if I need to bash myself, maybe I can do that by looking in the mirror, let alone then having to do an entire video on my own play. But let's go ahead and get started here. In this hand, back in spades has ace jack offsuit, and with Nitreg raising as much as he is, I think calling here out of position is just fine. Nitreg has such a wide range here that our call with ace jack offsuit getting a discount is going to be just fine given the price that we have. So we flop the worlder. We flop the absolute nuts. Now it's just a question of, all right, how do we want to play it? Do we want to slow play the flop, check raise the turn? Like, what will that represent? Do you want to just check raise the flop right away, try and build the pot? Or, I guess there's other options too, leading out the flop, check call flop, lead turn. I feel like the best options for you would be to check raise either the flop or the turn. And in this instance, against this opponent, I actually would like a check raise on the flop. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of Nitreg's value hands here have a lot of strength to them. You're looking at sets, you're looking at 2 pairs, you're looking at pair and straight draws, and so a lot of those hands are going to continue, if not get it in, versus a flop check raise. Another reason why we don't want, another reason why I'd rather check raise the flop is because there are a lot of bad turn cards that can come. Now, a lot of people are like, well, what if he'll two-barrel me on this board? And, I mean, yeah, but the thing is, if you wait to the turn of the check raise, that's all you're going to get is the 2 barrels, whereas if you check raise him on the flop, you've already gotten a second barrel but when he calls the check raise. So there's a lot of bad cards on the turn that I don't want to see, right? If the board pairs, pretty much if the board pairs is a very bad situation for us. We don't have a heart, so I'm not necessarily loving the heart too. So I mean, there's a lot of cards that can come, and an ace or a jack comes in, and it counterfeits the nuts that we have in our hand, including a 9. So there's just a lot of bad cards that if we can get it in right now, then we should try. And if otherwise, let's build a pot so much that we're going to win a big pot, and we're going to hopefully get stacks in if the board comes our way, rather than like waiting for the board to come our way and then check raising and whatnot. So Reg went ahead and bet out 22 cents, and we only called, and this is the reason why I'd like to see you check raise it up, or we could check raise this guy up to pretty big, probably like 80 cents or so, and we would have gotten the same size of what his 2 barrel would have been on the turn, which would have been 50 cents. We would have made more than that. I mean, we could have check raised at 50 cents too. So with this bet size, it's fairly, I mean, he's going to have a strong hand. The thing is, like, now we're afraid. No, I guess we're not afraid to check raise anymore. I'm sorry. I thought we could check all that down. We went and got our money in on the turn. We were actually behind on the turn. Nick hit the boat. And I'm not saying like getting money in is incorrect on this turn. I think it's all right check raising the turn after you didn't check raise the flop because that was your plan. But look more into check raising the flop. I feel like there's a lot more benefit to doing so. So, all right, let's go on to the next hand. Believe we have pocket 8s here. Yes, we do. So with pocket 8s, we call out of position. We're fine. We're playing against a guy. You don't have that many reads on him. Maybe 9 hands. He's kind of loose aggro so far. He pots it out in the flop. We call it. This is a very standard play for us. There's not really much we can talk. So far there's not much we can really discuss. Now on the turn, the jack comes out and we bet out. And this is something that I wanted to bring up because are we wanting our opponent to fold or to call? Right? Like, what happens if he shoves us? Are we calling? What happens like on the next street when he calls us and we have like half pot bet left on the river? Like, what do we do? And the reason why I bring this up is because like I kind of want to know what your motivation is for this play. If you're betting it out as a bluff, then I definitely don't like it. Right? So this bet can either be for value, right? So if you're hoping that he folds here when you have pocket 8s, it's not a very good play. But if you're hoping that he calls you with a worse range, I really don't know what that range is going to be. And that's kind of, it's very. I'm not saying that he's not going to call you with the worst range. He's got some smaller pairs there. There's a couple flush draws, but it's going to be a really hard time stacking off. As we are committed right now, by the way, if he goes ahead and gets it all in, because we're going to be getting like a crazy price with our once flop over pair. So I mean, it's not necessarily the line that I like to take. Were you afraid of like checking and letting him bet out again? Like maybe he'd go for a full pot. Maybe he'd do that. Maybe he check behind. It's understandable to be afraid of your opponent taking a free card on you with a marginal hand like pocket 8s, but it's one of those things where you just kind of gotta realize that if he does check behind here, you're most likely going to be ahead, and if that's the case, you're going to win the showdown very large percentage of the time, like 75%, and if he hasn't hit his hand yet, if not even more than that, depending on what kind of cards he has. Because even if he has a flush draw here on the turn, right, and he's got 2 overcards to go with that flush draw, he's still only like to 30% to win. So I definitely do not mind him checking behind and taking a free card because it gives me, it makes my hand easier to play on the river. Like I can check any river and pretty much call any bet that comes in, and I'll let him induce a bluff from him that way. Now, if we check to him here on the jack, and he goes ahead and bets out full pot again, I probably would fold to 2 full pot test bets. And if he were to bet this bet size, I'd have a hard time folding it, but I'd rather check call the bet in the situation, then go ahead and lead it out ourselves. If we had a hand like Ace Jack, it's a much different story, because this way if we have like Ace Jack of Spades, it's a much different story, because then we have a very strong hand with a lot of equity. If we are behind pocket eights, we've got really no equity if we're behind. We're called, right, and we check it out on the river, and we find out he's got ace high, which is kind of, we didn't expect to be called too much by ace high, which is kind of a strange thing. That's why I wanted to know, was this a value bet or was this a bluff? But I'm thinking it's a bluff, and I'm telling you that you probably shouldn't be trying to bluff pocket eights here on this board. Alright. One more hand here. I go ahead and, overlimp this guy rather than isolating. You guys could isolate, and many of you guys probably do isolate in this situation, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. I wasn't too afraid of people behind me isolating myself with overlimping here, so I'm just going to go ahead and overlimp my baby pairs. The back in spades here has Jack 8 suited, and the reason why I don't like his play is he should be isolating the hell out of both of us. Alright, if he's going to be playing this hand, Jack 8 suited is just way too weak to be limping in behind, trying to catch a free flop. What's going to happen is you're going to flop dominated everything. Jack 8 suited only really hits one nut hand, and that's the nut straight with his 7, 9, 10 board. Otherwise, it's impossible for you to hit a nut flush. It's impossible for you to... It's not really impossible to nut flush, but like if you hit a nut flush, like ace, king, queen, all your suits are on the board, and it's whatever, but it's very unlikely for that to happen. What's going to happen is you're going to flop a lot of dominated two pairs, a lot of not even dominated top pairs, let alone like middle pairs and stuff. That to limp in, it's not going to be great. If you had Jack 10 suited here, limping in is so much better, but at the same time, like, you could just raise that hand too. The only hands that I would probably limp in here would be like suited aces, baby suited aces, like ace 2, ace 6, maybe ace 7 suited, and then all the pairs like lower than 7s. Everything else, I think you've got to be ISO raising, and because you have position, you've got a fish under the gun. You've got me, who obviously I don't have a strong hand because I would have isolating the fish under the gun. So there's a lot of reasons for you to be isolating here, and including, you can isolate with Jack 8 suited and be okay with it. Like, you're raising out all the tight people behind you who you don't want in. You don't want to have Nitreg, you don't want to have Gingerbread in the man, you don't want to have Strato check in the hand as well, and you really don't want me in the hand. You really want to be heads up with you and the fish with whatever kind of hand that you have, regardless if it's marginal Jack 8 suited or if it's really, pocket aces. All pocket aces you can do more with the better players, but the whole goal is to take the money from the fish on this table, and we're lucky enough that we do have this one fish. Go ahead and isolate him, and I totally left it wide open for you to do it. So I was very surprised to see you limp behind here with Jack 8 suited. Now post flop, you end up flopping an 8. I like the bet here. A lot of the times you guys are going to see me like, well, why are you turning an 8 into a bluff? And it's because, when we're three-way like this, we have middle pair. The chances of us winning the hand at showdown right now, very slim. So the only, if we don't bet out here, yeah, we probably have the best hand at this point. But the thing is, like, our chance of winning goes way up when we're four-way like this by betting it out. So much so that, like, it negates the advantage that we would have by equity. If it were heads up, I wouldn't like to bet out. I would rather induce. But three-way or even, four-way in this situation, we've got to be betting out pretty much any two cards here, let alone if we have a pair. The fish calls us, just fine. He min bets out. I think post flop was played just fine after the fact that we limped in behind. All right, so this next hand here is played by Nitreg, and I believe he thinks that Strato check is a grinder skill reg as well. So Nitreg has pocket sixes in a situation, and he floats this flop. Not necessarily a great flop to float with pocket sixes. It is dry. It is for sure. But, like, I guess so it's not too bad. But, third pair with two outs. If you guys don't have to be floating here with sixes, and if if you guys fold in the situation, I don't think, like, very many people are going to have a hard time disagreeing with that decision. This turn comes, Strato check barrels the ace, and Nitreg decides to raise it up. And there are two problems with this hand by Netrag. He's got pocket sixes for one, which means he's only got 2 outs if he's behind. Number two, he's representing pretty much only a set of 2s or set of 7s here. Because if he had kings, or if he had ace-king, or if he had aces, he's either re-raising pre-flop, or Stratocheck is believing he's re-raising pre-flop with those hands. And so, regardless if he has them or not, he does. No one's putting him on the hand range, and so you've really only got 6 combinations. Not a very good card for you to bluff, and you're staking your entire, your entire profit in the hand on the fact that your opponent doesn't have an ace. Given the fact that you raised in relatively early position, you barreled once, barreled twice. He's got a pretty strong hand here most of the time. He probably doesn't have a hand like 10-9 suited all that often, although if he did, it'd be a good barrel spot for him. It's just that I think the number of value combinations that he has here compared to his bluffs is going to be pretty high. And as you can see, he did call the raise with the ace, which is kind of interesting. I probably would have folded the ace, but you have a better read that Netrag was being kind of aggro-y. So well played there, Stratocheck. And that's the reason why we don't bluff 2 outs on the turn, right? We have no equity when we're called. It'd be different if we had, if we had like Queen Jack of Hearts, and the ace of Hearts came out there, and we had plenty of equity in that situation to actually do the bluff raise. But it's all about trying to, when we only have 4% equity in the hand, trying to bluff somebody out of the pot is just totally minus EV and kind of gross. All right, so we're going to take a break right now. We're going to come back with some hands from Stratocheck, so don't go away. And we're back. We've got hands here from Stratocheck. We've got, I believe, 6 of them. So this should take us to the end of the video. In this hand, Stratocheck has a hand King Jack offsuit. All right, we got a fish out of position here, and we miss. And what happens so often in these games is the fish min bets out. All right, what should we do? Well, if we had a hand like a strong enough showdownable hand here, I'd have no problem calling Ace King, Ace Jack, Ace 10, any pair. You know what I mean? I'd be calling those. If we had a queen, we could either, depending on our kicker for the queen, I would either value raise or I would just call down as well. Once you start getting below showdownable hands, and I really include ace high showdownable hands, even though like King Jack and Ace Deuce in the situation are relatively the same, I probably would be raising up the lower weak aces too and trying to get hands like Ace 7 and Ace 8 to fold. But what Stratocheck did is he didn't raise up. He actually called with the King Jack. I like to see you guys raise up to your around 20 cents is going to be just fine. It's gonna it's gonna fold out all of his air. If he has a pair of queens, he's not going to be folding anyway. And if he has a middle pair too, he's probably not going to be folding. He's just playing it like a goofball. What I'd like to see you raise up on this flop, rather than we miss, we call it the turn. We miss, we call 3 streets here with min bets with nothing but king high. And I feel like if you were to just raise at some point in the hand, you're going to have a good chance of winning as compared to just calling down. Now, I don't like usually waiting to the river to raise in the situation just because your opponent could have picked up a 6 or a 9. He's not going to be going anywhere. On the flop, on the paired board, it's just so much harder for your opponent to hit any kind of hand that raising, you're going to take it down quite often. In this instance, I don't think you were going to get any folds just because he had a queen. He actually had river 2 pair. And I'd like to see you, though, bluff raise it and try to be more aggressive in this situation. Alright, so we go on to the next hand. In this hand, we have King 10 offsuit, 3-way, and we end up flopping a very, very good hand in a open-ended straight draw. If you look at both of these guys, neither one of them really folds the c-bets too much. Both of them are kind of fishy. I'm sorry, no, I'm just kidding. Netreg isn't fishy. But given 3-way, we want to be able to knock out one of these guys right away, and then tailor the rest of our play, hopefully get a free turn card to go. With the King 10 offsuit, with the double gutter open with the open-ended straight draw and 1 overcard, perhaps even a backdoor flush draw. I don't remember if he has a spade. We've got to be being aggressive here 3-way. And one way to improve your red line, which is essentially your non-showdown winnings,
is to c-bet more in 3-bet pots, and that includes when you have a lot of equity like this, rather than checking it behind and taking a free card. We end up pairing our 10, and at that point we're going to be calling. We could maybe raise this river, but given the action so far, if we do raise, it would be to about 150, and that way we could very easily fold to Nitreg shove, and it kind of squeezes the donk in between us. I think I would raise up. Well, and it's kind of tough because I know the results, and so I'm very. It might be results oriented here, but I'd like to think that we could value raise. We're only losing to the straight and the flush, and the thing is, if he does have the flush, he's not gonna put us all in because he's gonna be afraid of the board pairing and the boat coming. So we're only gonna get shipped down probably by a boat or a higher boat in this case, and he's gonna know that we're not bluffing. So I would like to value raise here. It's got very little risk and it can get all the value in the situation, even though, given that you've got bet and called in front of you, with the king 10 with the trips on this board, it's a very strong hand. I think it would be a good spot to raise, and it'd be definitely would be thin, but you're protected with the board pairing like that. The flush is going to go all in, and the only thing that's going to beat you is a higher boat, of which case you're only out 90 cents, but you're trying to get that remaining money from this fish over here. I don't think Nitreg calls with the ace queen at all. I don't even know if Pizza Noya comes in either, but you got to at least give yourself a chance to get that extra value. How the hand would have gone down with c-bet the flop, check turn, and then raise the river. Alright, so Treasure Check raises here under the gun. He has ace 10 offsuit, and we're three-way. I have fives, I'm obviously calling here. And again, I just talked about this in the last hand, continuation betting multi-way, especially on this board. We have ace 10 offsuit, so we have a gut shot, which, hey, gut shot and overcard, maybe a backdoor flush, I don't remember if we have a heart. That's enough outs for us to consider a continuation bet here, especially against somebody like Brohawk there, who's going to be calling with a lot of pairs. If he does call you, you can probably slow down on most turns there because he's probably got a king or a queen. And then me, I'm calling out of position. I've got so many pairs here that I'm just going to be letting go right away. So your continuation bet on this board is going to show an immense amount of profit. One, because we have equity, and two, just because of our hand ranges that we have. And what happens is, let's just get the showdown, and just checking 3 streets. All right, you let me win the hand with pocket fives, right? I mean, this shouldn't have happened in this situation. I should not have won this hand at all. I should not even have been able to see a turn. Once the flop checks through, though, the first person to bet's going to win, and I'm not going to be betting because I have a baby pair, so I'm not going to be turning my hand to a bluff. If I had a hand like ace 6, I might be betting out here. But at pocket fives, I'm more than willing to just go ahead and give up because it's not going to have a whole lot of effect on me. But sort of check, okay, even if you didn't c-bet the flop, betting the turn now becomes a must, just because, hey, the flop check through, Brohawk doesn't have a good hand, I don't have a good hand because I checked the turn again. Hey, just bet on the turn. If you get called, bet again on the river. You're going to be able to take it down, and it's not even going to be a decision there. All right, so in the next hand, I have ace king. Sotocek has pocket kings, and I go ahead and 4-bet him here. I'm not usually using my HUD in this situation, so I don't really know what Sotocek's stats are. If he's using a HUD, he knows that I'm raising up quite a bit, so I'm thinking, my ace king 4-bet here is very well protected, as with a lot of my bluffs. What happens is Sotocek calls the 4-bet with kings out of position, and I really don't like this play. I feel like just go ahead and get it all in. I've given you the opportunity to go ahead and jam it in, and so that way you can protect whatever bluffs that you might have, with whatever marginal value that has, hands that you have. And what happens is, with a hand like kings, especially against a lot of my 4-betting range, right, for value, is if I do have a hand like jacks and queens here, right, you're calling out of position to my 4-bet, you're going to get me sacking off anyway pre-flop, so might as well get it in. If I have a bluff, okay, like, I don't know, ace X or whatever, and I just, you're trying to get me in post-flop. Well, the only hands that I'm going to be getting in post-flop are hands that's going to beat you with the pocket kings. And with my current hand with the ace king, right, essentially, if I were playing optimally, or if I felt like, you could have a very strong hand here. I wouldn't be sacking off on this flop against your half pot bet size. Your bet size here is to, I don't know, induce a bluff raise maybe. I mean, I wasn't necessarily bluff raising as much as I was, hey, I mean, there's enough money in the pot. I don't want to just call the flop here. If he does have a hand like pocket jacks, I'm going to be able to, I'm going to have some profit, I'm going to have enough odds to marginalize this play. Plus, I'm not really sure on like why he would call like a 4-bet a position, and it's not exactly a great play. So with the kings here, yeah, you got me. Ended up getting in with the ace king, but against most players, go ahead and just get it all in pre-flop and take your winnings. Just because if you were to win that much money every single time anyway with the kings, you'd be a very solid winning player. All right, so we have a couple more hands here from Starter Check. This hand, he has Jack 9 of hearts. It's a solid open, playing against the fish. We have pretty much the best flop we could hope for. Right? We got 2 overcards. We have a flush draw. We've got a ton of 2-barreling cards, including a 10, a 7, a queen, a king, an ace. When we're hitting the nuts with the hearts, we can value bet a 9 or a jack very easily against this player. So we can intuition bet it out. I'd like to see you still 2-barrel this turn against this player. We have, with the flush draw, with the 9 outs, perhaps even the 15 outs with 2 overcards, just keep the pressure going. And if we brick the river, then I would give up. But yeah, there's something to be said about taking a free card. I'd like to see you probably value bet a little bit more here on this river. Bet. What would happen is you bit this 9, you would have banked it off, you would totally would have won. This guy calls you with king high, so you might not have had any fold equity on the turn. But like what would have happened is you're going to be hitting your hand enough on the next street that whatever fold equity that you think you have that you don't have is going to be made up by the fact that like 30% of the time you're going to hit your hand that you want to have. So I would certainly be 2-barreling the situation with pretty much any flush draw. I think I started doing that, especially against a fish who doesn't really fold a lot of flops, and as you can see, he's a very fishy person with the king 7 or the king high call down here. But I'd like to see you start barreling these strong draws more. Alrighty, here, and one last hand for the video. He has a hand ace queen offsuit, calls under the gun raise, which is fine. If it were full ring, I probably would just fold it out. And with the ace queen, he has the queen of clubs. And the problem with this raise size is pretty similar to what we talked about earlier in the video when one of the hands where he had Jack 10 of hearts or Jack 9 of hearts, and we ended up getting it all in with the combo draw, right, with the overcards, backdoor flush draw. If we are ahead here, right, and we do get it in, we're not that far ahead. Okay, we might be like 52%, even though it doesn't make any sense that we would be very far ahead. You guys think that like 2 overcards and the flush draw is the nuts when it really is what 15 outs. You're looking at roughly 55% equity in best case scenario. We only have the queen of clubs here. We don't have the ace of clubs, so that's not necessarily the nuts. We could be drawing dead if our opponent has pocket aces with the ace of clubs. So our overall equity here is probably around 40 to 45% against our entire hand range, especially against his hand range that's willing to stack off against us, which includes sets and whatnot. So against a 4-bet here, we should just be getting the hell out of the pot with the ace queen of clubs. If we had, I would have just called the flop and see what happened on the turn. If he continues on the turn, I probably just give up, thinking that he's either got a better flush draw than me, or he's going to have a better pair than me. I'm not really having the odds. This is not a hand, guys, that we want to be getting all the money in, ever. Honestly, and I mean, unless our opponent only has like 50 cents behind, go ahead and just don't raise this flop. I would call it, and then hopefully a good turn card comes, rather than like stacking off. We do end up hitting a good turn card. What would have happened was Netreg probably would have checked, and that's when we can either bet the turn here or we can bet the river, and Netreg ends up keeping his equity and hitting his boat. So overall, guys, I feel like the mistakes that you guys are making are very common mistakes, actually. So I feel like this has been a very good video. and the hands that I've been able to review are very indicative of other players' weaknesses at this stake, as well as up to including like 25 NL, full ring, and 6 max. So thank you guys for playing in the Grand School Cash Game series. Thank you guys for sending in your hands as well. It's very appreciative. And I look forward to the next time, and I look forward to playing against you guys and making sure that I continue to keep winning at these cash games series. I think I had a -1 buy-in day after messing around a lot with NetReg, but